I still remember the summer I found my grandfather's old trunk in the attic, hidden away behind a stack of dusty boxes and forgotten memories. It was as if time itself had been holding its breath, waiting for me to uncover the secrets that lay within. As I lifted the lid, a faint scent of lavender wafted out, carrying with it whispers of the past. The trunk was filled with clothes, some of which were still in their original packaging, and other items that looked like they'd been carefully curated as mementos. Among those mementos, I spotted a small album, its cover worn and faded, but the photographs within still radiating a warm, golden light. As I opened it, I noticed something peculiar, a pattern of hands. In almost every photo, someone's hand was visible, often extended in a gesture that seemed to be telling a story. There were children playing with flowers, adults holding hands with loved ones, and even a few images where hands seemed to be reaching out from the shadows. At first, I thought it was just my imagination, but as I flipped through the pages, the pattern became more pronounced. It was as if someone had intentionally placed these photos together, weaving a narrative that only became apparent upon closer inspection. I turned the album over, searching for any clues about who might have created this curious montage, and that's when I found it. A small inscription on the back cover, "For my dearest, with love." I felt a shiver run down my spine as I realized that these photos were not just random memories. They formed a message, hidden in plain sight. The question was, what did it say? As I pondered this, a detail still didn't add up. The hand holding hands seemed to change shape depending on the angle of the photo. It wasn't until later that I realized why. The album had been passed from person to person over the years, and each owner had added their own touch to the photographs. But here's the part that broke me. As I continued to study the photos, I began to notice something else. The hand that was supposed to be reaching out from the shadows wasn't just an anomaly. It seemed to be pointing to a specific location on the map that accompanied the final photo in the album. It took me weeks to track down the address, but when I finally found it, I discovered that it was a place I'd never heard of before, a small town on the other side of the country. And that wasn't even the worst of it. When I arrived at the town, I met an elderly woman who claimed to have lived there all her life. She told me stories about the family who had created this album, and how their hands had been intertwined for generations. As she spoke, I realized that my own hand was holding a small note with a message that read, "Our stories are woven into the fabric of our lives." I still think about those photographs often, wondering what secrets they might reveal. If only I could decipher the code that lies within their creased edges and faded colors. Perhaps it's time to look closer, to uncover more of the story that was hidden in plain sight all along. I carefully blew off the dust from each photo, watching as the forgotten moments began to resurface, like ripples on a still pond. The creased edges of one picture revealed a faint message scrawled across its surface. "The eyes that see are not the ones that look." I felt a shiver run down my spine as I wondered what this could mean. As I delved deeper into the album, I began to notice a pattern every time I looked at the same photo. I saw something different. A child's smile would reveal a glimpse of mischief, while a serene landscape would betray a hint of sadness. It was as if each image held multiple truths within its surface. One photograph caught my attention in particular. It was an old family portrait, with everyone gathered around a small table, laughing and smiling. But when I gazed at the picture, I could have sworn that one of the children's eyes seemed to be looking directly at me. It was as if they knew something I didn't. I turned the page and found another message. "The ones who do not see are the ones who hear." This time, I felt a strange sense of unease, as if someone or something was trying to tell me something from beyond the frame of the picture. My mind began to reel with questions. Who had created these mysterious messages? And how did they manage to hide them within the photographs? Was it some sort of code, or simply a clever play on words? As I continued to study the album, I started to notice that the messages seemed to be connected to my own life in some way. The phrase, "Our stories are woven into the fabric of our lives," echoed through my mind, as if it was meant for me alone. I remembered the stories my grandmother used to tell me about our family's history, how we had always been a family bound by love and tradition, but also by secrets and lies. Perhaps these photographs were trying to reveal some sort of hidden truth about our past. With newfound determination, I vowed to uncover every last secret that was hiding in those creased edges and faded colors. The game was on, and I was ready to unravel the mysteries that had been woven into my own life's fabric. The more I dug, the more I realized that the photographs were leading me down a rabbit hole of family secrets and lies. It seemed like every time I thought I'd uncovered something important, another thread would lead me deeper into the mystery. As I sat there, surrounded by the scattered remains of my childhood, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was getting close to something big. And yet, with each new revelation, I felt myself walking further and further away from the truth. The photographs had become a puzzle, one that refused to yield its secrets easily. But I was determined to solve it, No matter how long it took, time seemed to stand still as I sat there, lost in the sea of memories and half-remembered stories. The world outside my window began to fade away, leaving only the photographs and me, suspended in a world of our own making. And then, just as I was starting to feel like I'd hit rock bottom, I saw a photograph that seemed to defy explanation, one that made my heart skip a beat. It was an old family recipe book, its pages worn and dog-eared from years of use. As I opened the cover, a faint scent of lavender wafted up, transporting me back to a time when life was simpler. The recipes were all familiar. There was nothing out of the ordinary here. But then, on one of the last pages, I saw it. A message scrawled in the margin, written in my own handwriting. It read, "The truth is hidden where we least expect it." I stared at the words, my mind racing with questions. What did they mean? Who could have written this and why? And what truth were they hiding from us all along? The recipe book seemed like an ordinary object, but now I saw it for what it was. A key to unlocking secrets that had been hidden in plain sight. As I turned the pages, I noticed something strange. Every time I thought I'd seen every last page, another one would reveal itself. It was as if the book was designed to hide its message, or perhaps even to keep me from finding it. But what about all those photographs I had scattered around my room? Were they just random snapshots, or were there clues hidden within them? I began to sift through the photos again, this time with a new set of eyes. Each one seemed innocent enough: birthday parties, family vacations, lazy Sundays. But now I saw something different. A photo from my 5th birthday, where I was sitting on the floor surrounded by building blocks and construction paper, looked almost deliberate. Was that just my imagination? Or did someone have deliberately angled the camera to reveal a specific detail? The same thing happened with the family holiday gatherings. My parents were smiling and laughing in all the photos. But if I focused hard enough, I could see tiny symbols hidden in the decorations, the table settings, even their clothing. It was like they had been trying to send me a message all along. And what about the pictures of my grandparents? There was something strange about their faces. A faint smile that seemed out of place in some of the photos. But it wasn't until I saw the picture from my grandfather's last birthday party that I realized why. There, tucked away behind his ear, was a small piece of paper with another message scrawled on it. The answer is in the stories we tell. I felt like I had stumbled into something much bigger than myself. Something that spanned generations and secrets. The message hidden in my old photos was just the beginning, and I couldn't shake the feeling that there were more clues waiting to be uncovered. It was then that I started digging into our family's history, poring over old books and newspapers, looking for any mention of these cryptic messages. I found a tattered copy of my great-grandmother's diary, hidden away in a trunk in the attic, with a faded note tucked between its pages, the story behind the smile. As I turned the pages, I discovered that she had been a traveling performer, one who used her wit and charm to entertain audiences. And it was then that I stumbled upon a photograph of her from one of her shows, where I noticed for the first time the faintest hint of a message on the edge of the frame, a single word: inherit. I couldn't help but wonder what this message might mean, and whether it was connected to my own life in any way. I decided to take a closer look at the photograph again, this time searching for any other hidden messages or symbols. As I examined the edge of the frame more closely, I noticed that the word inherit was subtly different from the others. The letters seemed slightly raised, as if they had been etched into the glass itself. It was a small detail, but one that sent a shiver down my spine. I decided to share my discovery with my sister, who had always been fascinated by our family's history. We spent hours poring over old photographs and talking about our great-grandmother's life as a performer. She told me stories about the shows she would put on for sailors and travelers at ports around the world, stories that seemed to hold secrets of their own. As we talked, I began to notice something strange every time she smiled in one of the photos. Her eyes seemed to be looking directly at me. I knew it was impossible, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to these photographs than met the eye. I decided to take my sister's suggestion and dig deeper into our family's history, searching for any other clues or hidden messages. We spent weeks scouring online archives and visiting local libraries, looking for any mention of our great-grandmother or her performances. It wasn't until we stumbled upon an old newspaper article that the connection became clear. A small ad for traveling circus had included a cryptic message in the margin, almost identical to the words it had found on my great-grandmother's photograph. The article mentioned a tragic accident that had occurred at one of their shows, one that had left several performers injured and one person dead. The name of the deceased was listed as Alina, but there was no mention of what had caused her death. I felt a chill run down my spine as I read the article. It was clear that something tragic had happened to Alina, and I couldn't help but wonder if she might be connected to the messages in our family's photographs. But it wasn't until we received a package from an unknown sender that the pieces finally started to fall into place. Inside the package was a small, leather-bound book with pages filled with handwritten notes, each one detailing a different performance by our great-grandmother, along with strange symbols and codes that seemed to match the messages in our photographs. The final page was blank, except for a single sentence written in elegant script: "The truth is hidden where you least expect it." As I delicately turned the pages of the book, the symbols began to make sense. They were a mix of letters and numbers that corresponded to dates on our old family photos. I started by entering the date range for my childhood birthday party into my phone's camera app. And to my amazement, the camera app would display a hidden message in the grid of pixels. The symbols translated to an arrow pointing towards a specific image from the party. It was a faded photograph of me, standing next to my grandmother, both of us grinning at the camera. My heart started racing as I realized that this might be more than just a prank or a coincidence. I carefully entered the date for my first family vacation into the app, and the hidden message changed again this time, pointed towards an old postcard from our trip to Europe. The words "Eleanor's Journey" were scribbled on the back of the postcard, and as I flipped it over, a small, almost imperceptible mark was visible on the edge. I turned the postcard over and examined it more closely. The mark was a tiny, almost indistinguishable symbol that looked eerily similar to one from the book. A shiver ran down my spine as I wondered if this could be a clue to Eleanor's death. The symbols started to make sense when I connected them to other family members' photos. There was an image of my great-aunt Emma, her face obscured by a veil, with a symbol that matched one from the book. The connections were starting to become overwhelming, and I felt like I was on the cusp of something big. But as I delved deeper into the symbols, I began to realize that there might be more than just one message hidden in our family's photographs. The trail of clues was leading me down a rabbit hole, and I wasn't sure what I would find at the end. As the sun began to set on this newfound discovery, I sat back in my chair, feeling both exhilarated and terrified. I had uncovered a secret that had been hidden for decades, but I still didn't know if I was ready to face it.